it's Bridgette Dolgoff. I've got Par from Sweden, and I've also got Ryan Hunter. We were supposed to have a few more people on, but I think with the crazy stuff going on, it's really hard for people to actually remember, and just, you don't know what kind of crisis you're going to have during the day. So it takes a lot of precedence, just surviving. So today I wanted to have a conversation on the collab, kind of about current events, things leading up to this point, collectively, personally, how we're dealing with it, how we see what's going on. Maybe we might be doing some preparation work, whatever pertains to kind of like current events that are going on and what we know, how we feel about it. So just kind of a general conversation about it. So anyway, anybody want to start off with some thoughts?
I feel the American side should talk first. I'm in Scandinavia, so it's more hot, kind of, even if it's
in America. The situation.
Well, yeah, your situation there is kind of the hot spot about events. The big. Well, let me say like this: 2 years ago, we had election in Sweden, and there were first it was artificially induced, 100% sure. Geoengineered summer, so hot from May to actually 3 weeks before the election in September. I think it was actually September 12th or something, 11th, we had the election. So, and in the summer they started huge wildfires in Sweden as well. So it was the same pattern kind of in preparation going on there, and likely I think the election in Sweden was important to create a situation where people would go along with the situation, the world situation, the world agenda, and so on. It should not rock the boat, so to say, and not invite people to wake up too much, because I follow Dennis Fetcher's show a lot. He had his live show some hours ago. He has 2 shows a week, and he goes live all the time. And he is speaking, and I had a guest calling in, and he said he kind of was too surprised to meet one person he connected. Many of us come into the realization of reality is not really what's presented for us. So we make a long journey to come to grips with what is reality and real. What's the better way to understand the world around us, and then we learn lots of things. That's the path into the truth, kind of. And so he had one person, the guest, call in and say he suddenly met someone without a mask in a big supermarket. So. And they could naturally start to talk. So it was, and both were awake to such an extent they could really connect. And he felt like it was almost for the first time forever, or very long time, since he could connect to someone close in the same area he was in. Me, my age, I'm above 50, and I can meet men of age 50 up to maybe 75. And I've found the last 3-4 years quite easy to start up a conversation about the fake surrounding of us, and really we are in the focus eye of being torn down, getting rid of, kind of. And I find it, if you use the right path in, it's quite easy to discover a lot of people around that are everything from semi-conscious to quite well aware about the world agenda. I see Australia, their winter, their summer, their fires they had now half a year ago, and now America. It's the same theme running here. I will make a pause here and leave for others to continue.
One thing about those fires, though, is that the West Coast fires, these fire seasons have been about the last 10 years have been horrible. And of course, last year we had Paradise. This year just a huge number of fires that are all kind of melding into one ring of fire. They've used that phrase before too, but it's something that I think has a lot to do with the climate engineering and some of the just the scientific tests, the tweaks that we've done to the atmosphere, the weather, the environment that are trickling down and causing some of this stuff. Not that there aren't intentionally started fires, but we've been seeing this every summer. As somebody who lives on the West Coast, or near enough the West Coast, every summer we've been seeing this, and we've been seeing, smoke. We get the red orange sun. It's almost like Monk. It's almost like after the eruption of Krakatoa. It's kind of a, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's that far from fire and brimstone, honestly.
Well, what to think?
Yeah. Well, another thing. Yeah. I mean, it's totally, it's all totally made because I watch Mike Marole's, YouTube channel, and every night he does like a weather, update, and people send him all kinds of videos, and he's, big into the geoengineering, and he shows all the maps every night of what they're doing and the HAARP frequencies and the radiation frequencies. He showed a video today talking about how they've tried to hide this phenomenon in Oregon, where they have all this radiation, these radiation, heater uppers, and they did like a whole huge area over Oregon, and then the Oregon media was told to downplay it to bats. That's why the phenomenon was happening and why it was visible, on satellites, was because, it was like a whole bunch of bats left their caves at one time. And even Mike Morella says that's like the most ridiculous thing ever. But
well, and the baddest excuse is wearing a little bit thin, right? They tried to blame COVID-19 on bats as well.
Yeah, no. So,
Year of the bats.
Yeah.
The Chinese year of the bats. So that's kind of a clue in. They're like, it's an act, it's theater. So maybe you should laugh about their cunning, small wits about they're trying to make jokes about it.
Yeah, they see it, and but anyway, so I mean, it's all being made, and I think that there are people. I saw a video today called the Hillbilly Crew, and it was a whole bunch of people that because of the fires were not working, loggers. There was a woman who ran a ranch who had a her little bulldozer out, and she was making road, but it was a whole bunch of these people that lived near this town, that worked in and out of that town in Oregon, that came together and actually didn't really know what they were doing. They got to the area right when the government actually, left, because they had to go somewhere else. And they actually took all of their equipment, and the loggers, cut down the things that needed to cut down, and they all got in there. And they, like 20 people, they're calling the Hillbilly Crew or something like that. They actually saved this town because they didn't know what they were doing, but they just did what other people said that they should: create fire roads, breaks, so that the fire doesn't leap. And they're like, save this whole town, and then kept the fire from going that direction, So I'm starting to see, like, some people that are on the move, because, a lot of people don't realize, before government, right? Before, city, state, and local government in the U.S., people came together. People made everything. You had people making shoes, and you had people doing this, and people have a pharmacy, people growing food, people making roads. And you saw all these people, when things needed to happen, you had to lay down your shovel or whatever else, and you had to man up with your community, and you had to go out there and get done. Save your community, take care of it. Everybody was involved in it, right? And then it became jobs that we gave away, and we gave people control to do these things for us. And I remember there was this story that came out. There was this little Colorado town that decided that as a town, they were not going to pay taxes anymore. And they said, we're not electing any officials in the city. We're not going to be paying you taxes. We don't want you to take care of our parks. We're going to take care of them. And all the people in the town, especially the older people who didn't have jobs, who were retired, were like, we'll just take over everything and do it. Take care of it. And they actually look forward to going to the park and mowing it, you know what I mean, and taking care of it. Eventually, they ended up getting rid of the paved roads, right? Because the government, said, hey, we're not going to, you're not paying taxes in your town and you're not doing what you need to do. So we're not going to give you any money to pave your roads, and we're not going to send out crews to do it. And they were like, fine, who cares? And they said for a few years it was pretty rough in the winter because the pavement breaking up, made everything just way worse. But eventually the town got together with equipment from different farmers. People came in, they got rid of, all the pavement, and they actually, then they started to manage their own roads, right? And keep them really nice. And they actually were better. So you can see, like, I think that a lot of people, and especially people that are younger than me, they don't really understand kind of, and, I want to use these kinds of terms loosely because I'm not, wasn't, and I don't want people out there to take offense, but I'm not a super patriotic person. Maybe I'm a global or world patriot. You know what I mean? Like, I think humans matter. I think that people matter. I think the earth matters, kind of a thing. So, but a lot of people don't realize, like, a lot of the people that came to America initially, I don't think that they really wanted to harm the Native people. I think that they were just looking to do the work that they want to do or their part in the world. And that's kind of like, I think early on what the American thing is, because there were so many people who did come from other countries who did produce goods, handmade goods and farmed and, and we had amazing, beautiful industry. I mean, we had so many things that were being made from hemp, which is like biodegradable. You can make it. I mean, paper and rope and canvas and boats and cars and, and because everybody got to invent, everybody got to participate, everybody was forced to work together as a community. And so we volunteered, and even early Congress, senators were volunteer positions. They didn't get paid, right, to do these positions. They did it as a public service, right? That's where it comes from. I'm smart in this field. You know what? How about community? I'll help you with this because, I'm versed in law. So let me help, on our law angle, to help the community and make things better. And then eventually when they became jobs, then, even Steiner talks about the materialism problem. I mean, he died when he was 58, but I think he was murdered in like 1924, but his work still stands today on a lot of these issues. And about materialism, how it's been like the worst downfall for everything, all living beings, including the development of the human. It's like throwing us back to the Stone Age as far as people's, mental. But I think that, people have got to kind of, not very many people in America are very talented anymore, right? We don't have trade skills. People are not really good at a lot of the stuff. People are good at staying home and talking on their phone and playing video games and, their computers. And that's going to be
That's what the whole lockdown is all about. They're giving us what we want. That's all Americans are good for anymore.
Well, that's the thing. So that's the big trouble that I think we're going to face in America is that There are very few people that still, can take down a log and, make a house out of it, that even know how to do some of this stuff. There are cob building for houses, which, there's some beautiful ones. And farming, there's so few people that are not only farming, but not willing to do that kind of work. So I think in America, that's going to be people being able to take care of themselves and live with themselves first is going to be difficult, to be self-sufficient. To work in a community is going to be next to almost impossible. Because I've already done like 30 communities in the United States, all different kinds, and realize like that's going to be a really bad situation for kind of what's coming into America. It's probably better to think on your own feet. But those are the kind of things that I see coming, because there's no labor, to do the things that are going to be really important, because people are used to, buying like a carrot in the store and don't realize like that carrot takes, and this is my hotbed. My hotbed is food and growing food. That's my hotbed. But, people don't realize I was doing backyard builds for 7 years. So I go to people's houses and I build up their yard in a way where they could actually grow food, taught them non-stink composting from biodynamics, taught them how to utilize microbial sprays, making different kinds of, earth medicine into sprays, how to utilize those, all kinds of stuff. I would try to see what I could get going on a 1/4 acre and design it the way people wanted it. But once I left it, I would come there and teach them, and I would plant it, and I would show them how to do things, leave them seeds so that they can, do a garden bed. Sometimes I'd be there like 3 seasons, 2 seasons, so they had winter growing, they had cold frames that I put in and everything else. But once I left it, they did nothing with it. It turned into like apocalypto. In some cases I had to go in and save chickens, because the neighbor would say, the chickens are looking bad over there. Because, when I was doing a build in the backyard, all the neighbors would know what I was doing, because they were interested, right? They wanted to see, they couldn't believe all the food that I was pulling out, right? This beautiful food that looked even better than they could get in any kind of grocery store. And so then when there was problems with the build later on down the road, sometimes I would get a call from the neighbor because they were worried about the chickens. So I even had to go in and save chickens, because people just decided they didn't want to deal with them anymore. So they just enclosed them into this little chicken space. And then the chicken poop was 5 feet deep in their container, and all their feathers were gone. And, but, I realized then that, most people in the United States will not make it. Because it's growing food is just not an important thing. You teach them that, it takes a carrot to grow. I mean, most people in Nevada can't even grow a carrot. I grow beautiful carrots. But they can't even get a carrot to grow, like the average person in their backyard. So the situation is that they don't realize, it could be 4 months waiting on that carrot. But if you want seed from that carrot, you have to leave some of those carrots in the ground, because carrots only seed, they are biannuals. So they seed the second year that they're in the ground. So as far as food viability, you have to actually know that, because if you eat all the carrots, or you don't realize how many carrots you have to leave, because how many people are we going to have on the land next year? So how many seeds are we going to need? And leaving that amount of carrots, so you go from seed to seed. And people can't even grasp that concept, that you have to make sure the condition of the ground is good. It doesn't have too much water, too little water, and that its condition's good. If it gets a little frosty, you want to cover it. You have to pay attention to the food and really, 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 really be there every day with it, making sure it's okay. And people just don't really understand that activity, and they don't want to do that activity. And I think
people are not even okay, these are unfamiliar routines for people in the way that we've been acculturated into, our consumerist lifestyle. Nobody grows their own food from the ground anymore in this country, whatever. I mean, but it's so far from what people are prepared. Like, people don't even have, they're too checked out to even understand what's going on, much less think that they need to actually, invest this time into understanding and learning to do all of these agricultural things. I mean, I've been watching it, and it's a generational thing. It's gotten progressively worse.
Mm-hmm.
We've been deprived of all of our real life skills, to the point where, the younger generation, the iPhone generation, doesn't even, practically can't even exist in the physical world. All they understand is Facebook reality, the digital world, right? And it's kind of, even just working an ordinary job is kind of beyond them. It seems, in a lot of cases. And it's when the true reality comes back to bear on your life, and you're either going to, eat or starve. We've been so pampered in this country that people are not even ready to face that situation.
Yeah, and it seems everything is going to plan. They probably want things to be like this, and Georgia Guidestone and among other sources will tell us the so-called elites or social planners are aiming for a much smaller world. So in their eyes, it probably thinks is working great. I actually grew up in a family that took the semi-step from the farmer life and still loved garden life or garden activity. So we actually had 1.5 acre, 3/4 hectare, as we say in our region, that was set for basically vegetables. My parents were vegetarians, and my mother was sadly deeply hooked into cultural Marxism, and most easily decoded by her. She picked up like a cue phrase or a popular phrase to throw around yourself, and that's the new man, the new man. Well, no, blah, 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 no, but the new man should. And then she had something in her hand that was vegetarianism and environmentalism. And those organizations were quickly hijacked by the elite planners, actually, and most people engaged in environmentalism or health find that really they are controlled by the richest bankers. All the same, almost the same people they are criticizing are controlling themselves. So, and my mother sadly comes close to that category, to being a hijacked enthusiast for something that seems good, but it was actually led away somewhere else to something that right now we can see clear in the eye. My mother herself grew up on a farm, and actually sadly she rejected kind of this mundane life, and sadly also school encouraged her to look forward for this new world coming, and should be so great. And in my own understanding of history events, I can see my own country fell most likely in the 1700s, and was planned to, in the 1800s, to first break down the countryside farmer village structure, throw the farmers out on the naked land alone. From that step, throw the farmers into the towns. And from that step, throw the broken families with the large family or the real family into the so-called nuclear family. So everything is scaling down for the solid and strong structure of traditional life. They are narrowing it down. And from the nuclear family, now they're breaking down the relationship between men and women. breaking up families, and now they're breaking up the identity of even your own sex and so on. And all these steps is going progressively. And I can see, Bridgette, you touch a bit on it, like the current situation in America. Most people are not even aware of. Are we in touch with reality? Are we really creating things for reality, or are we sitting a job just for the show, to shovel paper or type on the digits on the screen? Is it really doing anything value for it? And the few farmers we have, they produce with an extremely intensive, resource demanding system. And before, people were likely more happy living in the countryside, in the small farmer villages 250 years ago, 300 years ago. Even that world, of course, keeps dark sides or tough sides. So, well, you are not free. You cannot travel the world. You cannot read books. But most likely you were engaged in. When the daytime finished, you would be gathered in the large family with 3 generations around you, listening to traditional or orated stories and myths and lore and lots of things, and you would have the community of the farmers' village take care of things to sustain and to survive. So that's. People now have lost this side, and of course it's sad. Now it seems like the next step in the social planning is on the horizon. There's a big fight about it, maybe.
Yeah, and we're more and more isolated, and we're more and more detached from everything that makes us human. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people talk about nostalgically about, oh, what happened to good old family values? I'm not so much into that, because family values, like you were hinting at, Par, is that was actually the first breakdown. When we went from community values to family values, that was the tip of the spear.
Good point. Very good point.
So I look back to what happened to our community values? What happened to our tribal values, where we all were pulling together, living cooperatively with one another?
But Ryan, maybe they shift us this path. So of course we should. I will think like the kernel would be the family values, but outside would be structures in harmony or vibrating similarly to the cohesion of the society around you, and now the region. So almost like 3 layers, or the picture of. So we should try to see what is the strength of family values to come back to community values. I'm sorry to break you off there. So continue, please.
Well, and community values themselves. I mean, like you said the word correctly, harmonize. So if we're living in harmony with the people around us, then that whole community also needs to find a harmony with nature. Because again, what we need to get back to is natural law. We need to stop this hubris of thinking that we always know better than nature and trying to contrive a reality. Because every time that we contrive a reality for ourselves to exist in, and we think, oh, things will be so much more convenient, we're making progress, we get further and further away from everything that makes us human. We become more and more robotic, and we might as well, with the course that we've been taking over the last, few decades, we're going to reach the point where we might as well not even be conscious.
Sure.
We're just mindless automata doing whatever we've been programmed to do, walking between the lines and not asking any questions.
Let's touch on one of Bridget's comments before. We would degrade to Stone Age, but actually in Stone Age, or way back, probably they were much more sophisticated than we really could imagine, and so much more in tune with both technology, but their way. because you have to be really clever to be efficient with fewer items in your assets. And well, still, maybe they were not at all so poor in assets. Maybe they actually had quite, if we would be able to come to a Stone Age village or farmer village, maybe we would be totally just blown away about how sophisticated still it would be. I tend to believe that could be the case. And to live in Stone Age, you probably had to be quite sophisticated and skilled in many ways.
I agree. I just was, throwing that. The statement I made was like one that most people believe that's a general statement. But I think if you were in the Stone Age right now, this would be a really good time for you to be on Earth, because you'll survive all the things that are going to collide simultaneously.
But as Ryan said, we have too much nostalgia about this and that. Well, life is hard work, and to live is probably to suffer more than to jump around joyous with happiness. And the variation or the fluctuation between different poles or different sides of reality, it doesn't need to be poles like, or maybe as the so-called Putin will say, we want a multipolar reality or world around us. And that's probably because, like, I can sense there is something that we don't have instruments to sense, or at least not all of us. Some humans have this sense naturally, like seeing into the, well, maybe connections or events of history, connection between people. They can say like things sounds magic for someone, but probably they have an instrument of intuition inside, or connection to something. And an instrument is like an eye, and actually a radio telescope needs to be able to view out in space. It needs one telescope on the one side of the Earth and the other side of the Earth simultaneously oriented in the same spot in space far away to have the capacity for its instrument. The instrument is an eye, it collects information, and it needs this size, the whole Earth, and two technical things on each side of it. Now our eye is dimensioned like a thumb, or so. Well, it's a fraction of something here, and this opening is suitable for the frequencies of light that we actually can decode in our instrument. Our eye is an instrument. So the things we have, like our five senses, most will say really it's six senses. Your knowledge about where your body parts are is a sense, and without this sense you will not function. That's kind of a sense of itself. And the intuition of seeing into the future, or being connected to, like the so-called spooky or I'm not skilled with this, like the so-called energy realms or the spiritual realms. I'm not so clever with that. I'm more oriented to what I see. But well, let me try to cut off here, and someone spin on with something for us to talk.
Okay, so I have some questions, maybe, because sometimes I get accused of like, well, you guys brought up all of the questions and talked about it, but you didn't really talk about not so much solutions, but the other side. So if you were going to define, and I'll start out first. I have like 4 questions here, because I think it's important to talk about what we would consider these values, right? Because a lot of people don't really know. Individually, we might have different ideas about what a family value is, and then how that plays out into the community value. And then how does that play out globally? But let's just talk about family values, because I think, throw it out there, well, we should have family values that lead to community values, but we're not really explaining kind of what those values are and what perception we're coming from. So I'll just kind of start. And I have no idea about family values. I was raised in a very clairvoyant type, family situation with a mother who was pretty messed up. She was kidnapped and handled and put into a mental hospital and was given electroshock therapy and all kinds of stuff. So 10 years later, she had me. So I always say her chimichanga was fried from the get-go. But so I don't know. I mean, I think for me personally, I have a lot to learn about family values. Also, I rebelled against, getting married, having personal relationships. I chose to go to school and follow shamanism, a very strict shamanism path. So, I don't really know much about raising kids. I can fix them. I can work on them. I can, feed them right. If they need a little back adjustment, I can give that to them. But, I have a dog, that I've raised, and I'm a lot better with the environment and animals. So for me, like if I was thinking, what's my family value, I would think about having land in my farm, and me being the mother kind of that scenario, and taking care of it and taking care of the animals and their offspring and the seeds, planting those every year. Those are offspring, having just kind of a different relationship with being more of a steward, I guess, of like a farm and nature. So my family values might be that it's my job to get up every day and in the middle of the night, if I hear something going on out of my land, if I hear a cow mooing in distress, I need to get out there right away and figure out what the heck is going on, right? Because that's my part of taking care of. Or if there's a forest fire coming, like how do I protect my land? How do I protect everything else on my land? But I'm going to put myself second, right? Because that's my family value. It's my family. I have to take care of it. I brought it there. I created it. And it's my job to make sure that it has the best quality life, and experience that, that I can give it. So my values would be, working hard for my family, my land. I'm giving it tons of love and nurturing, looking at it, helping it, nurturing it, giving it food it needs, whatever else. And I'm sure that it could be similar to other family values. And then also the responsibility to make that section of earth better, take care of it, plant more things in it, make the soil better, make the air better, make the water better, and learning these kinds of skills in order to do the best that I possibly can. So I think my family value is just, I would work hard for my family in that context. And that, that would be a good energy that would go out to the next ring, right? Like you were talking about, Par. But anyway, what would you guys have any ideas on family values, what they are, what they're not, or what they may be?
Should you go first, Ryan, or I could expand on your make a wise observation about family values is something broken, because it is likely the nuclear family shipped away from the countryside and the connection with real life. So in my view, there would be traditions would be the wisdom of generations before. So it's famously spoken about the Indians in America, like they would have connection or memory 7 generations back, and they would plan for 7 generations forth. And in doing so, traditions will keep a value of survival and wisdom and knowledge to take care of. And life is tough and difficult. So in the family, I think a lot of things that is metaphoric storytelling, like mythology, legends, or oral traditions, they will be designed to image the kind of sacred unity of man, woman, and child, and maybe Trinity of the so-called Christianity is a trace of this. The thread back into wisdoms is like, what could be more sacred than, and a man would have his kind of natural talents he will be proud to take care of. and he will have absolute needs from support, not only emotionally, but for the next generation to happen, for the child to happen. Only that will a single point will push him to be the natural ally of his queen in life, sort of say, the woman, the man, woman, or husband, wife, and child. So the man will have an absolute need, and he will have something to offer the woman to make her like invest or sacrifice all the, as they say when you get married, for better and worse. Like, well, life is neither roses nor hell all the time. So the family, I have some few things I could add. Like, I think the alphabet, the Latin alphabet in its construction, actually the A, B, and C, and Dennis Fetcher helped me to find this, designs a clever code about man, woman, and child in a very beautiful way. I will not expand on that story. It would take me 20 minutes, but it's quite a beautiful one. And the ABC, and many will say, learn your ABC, and even in that is almost pointing to like the Holy Trinity, or Father, the Holy Father, the Holy Mother, or the Goddess, and the child. So that's kind of a super important thing, message. And the Chinese sign for harmony and safety, something like that. I take from memory now, but it's the stylized version of their sign for a grown-up with his arm holding out, and in the arm a small packet that symbolizes the baby. So what more could be really a beautiful way to design a core value in your cultures, in your traditions. Like the word and the symbol for safety is like the grown up mother or father protecting its child in life and for life. And of course things should grow. We are a people of producers and growers. We that's the way we will try to come to nature and support nature and ourself around it. So the family structure, there should be something the man needs from the woman and offers, but also the vice versa, and something the man should be afraid not to hurt or damage this relationship. There should be a mutual challenge, that something, if you did it, you could have public shame that should support. It's like the layer outside, the community layer with, you will not do that, because then it will jeopardize the family sacred structure, because the need should naturally be like this child. It actually takes two couples with two child from himself to create only one new couple for the future. That means that's why we need more than 2 children from every couple. The number is 2.3 children per woman, in order for society to sustain its level, because the jeopardy of losing life before you can create a new child makes this extra need for, well, actually every family should aim to have at least 3 children. That should be the natural way to prepare for the stability of the future. And now going out to, that will be the next question. You will say, what will be community values? And in my country, I can make a reflection over how naturally it's programmed into Swedish woman to absolutely behave so masculine and dominant and arrogant against men. So they are total, men are totally French. How do you say this English word?
Disenfranchised.
Disenfranchised to hardly even try to create this sacred family with the woman from his own country. And a lot of Swedish women are talking so bad about men, not only but men in general, even against their brothers or their sons or their fathers. And really, how could we accept this? And they have taken away the power and force in men to publicly have the right to say and shame this. How absolutely can you talk this against your brothers and fathers? How can you how really then leave this land? Because we are here we created this, and our forefathers created this land with sweat and hard work and tears and love and passion, and we are here in honor of the generations before us, and we are here to leave this for the future. So they have cleverly destroyed, not only 250 years ago, they destroyed the farmers' village structure, then threw the farms away out, isolated, then destroyed the farmer's life and into the town, and so on, as I talked about before. Now we're in the stage like, you cannot even be man and say, really, why, how can you do this? And Swedish women are like small, how do you say, jittery girls as soon as a foreign man is around, because they have the natural need to be feminine for men. They are hard programmed to be like against the Swedish man, but they are programmed same equally to be like, you should be, of course you should be with foreign men. I think family value and traditions, we should have the multitude of cultures around the world, and we should make it sacred for cultures to have its stability and its honor and glory of itself, because it will be connected to land, as you said, Bridgette. I think land was a very great thing you mentioned, because the connection to land, I think it's so strong, and it's actually like something magic maybe, because the land around you and its character will shape a people for sure. And some people will be...
it kind of cracked me up, because, you went off on Swedish women, how they're being kind of defiant and more masculine. And number one, I kind of consider myself that way too. Like, I'm very dominant personality. But the other thing too is that I was thinking, if that's all you have to complain about with the Swedish woman, when American women, I'm going to generalize,
yeah, go on,
just spend a lot of time getting hammered and drunk and sleeping with all kinds of different men and leave children in their wake. There are some women in America that are living on welfare, and every time they need more welfare, they just go out and have a one-night stand with somebody, and then they have another kid. And so you have all these women that have all these kids in tow in the United States, because the men aren't going to stand up and take care of their kids once she's decided to hoe out. And then these kids are, being raised in these really not so ideal conditions.
Oh,
and
yes.
Have, like on average, I'm 52 now, but when I was about 30, my girlfriends were on their second marriage with at least one or two kids, and then going into the second marriage, and then like each marriage would last like a year, right? And then, but before you know it, they've got like 4 kids and no dads, nobody around. So I'm just kind of giving you a bigger picture.
Well,
like,
let's take on that.
Would you rather have all these drunken women who don't really give a damn about anything?
Exactly. And I'm colored about my own experience, but I can see the broader picture. And as you say, that should be something that is a shame thing against men. You cannot go and make some woman pregnant and then get away from it. In old culture, and actually my grandparents, probably on my father's side, it was like the priest were like sighing when they came in and ordered the wedding, and the priest could see again yet another woman with a little bulge on the stomach. But like 100 years ago, it was clear the culture in our region and most regions, Western and onwards, that really if you make the mistake and a girl is pregnant from you, now you will marry this girl and take care of these children. finish, and that would be like community values. That would be like an outer shell of things. It could be allowed, but you please be careful if you try to play around as before marriage, because if something really happens. So
yeah,
so
and that might have been a scenario that, happened like, over 100 years ago in the United States, probably, they called them shotgun weddings. But anyway, we should let Ryan have a chance to talk about what family values are and what maybe his new ideas of family values, or whatever he wants to say.
So, well, when I brought up the subject of family values, I wasn't really talking about it as like something we should aspire to. I was talking about it in terms of like that's one step back, one step better than what we have now, when we've been so completely fractured as a society, even fractured as individuals at this point. But family values aren't what I was. I'll give you my reference frame for it. It's the unit of consequence. It's sort of the what's the dominant reference for the ego in a certain epic, in a certain region or culture or what have you. Because I'm looking at the progression, and I'll give you an example actually. And this is something that I've brought up a few times. I've had some interesting counterpoints made and whatever, but I'm just going to throw out, because it's still a thing in India, the practice of arranged marriage. So, and I'm not trying to say that it's totally a positive thing or whatever. I'm trying to say, all right, in our culture, in Western culture, at this kind of juncture in time, we kind of go like, how could people ever accept such a scenario, right? Because we're so strongly individualized, and you gotta this is also a thing where, of course, our what we call a personality, or our individualism is strongly a function of our sexuality, because, well, the personality is, if you want to think of it that way, is kind of our sexual display, right? It's like the peacock's feathers. It serves the function of attracting a mate, more so than any, useful purpose. We could all be, dead bland and whatever, and still feed ourselves and still have a life, right? But the fact that we individuate into different personalities and do our little dance, that's a whole mating ritual. And but our mental reference frame has evolved over the millennia. And so before, in a time past, we were more identified with the family unit than with our individual self identity. And so we kind of, our whole mindset was through that reference frame. Our consciousness was more literally pooled as a family unit. But when I talked about family values, I was saying, well, that's a limited advantage, because then now your family unit is still in competition with all sorts of other family units and trying to get one up on each other on a whole different level. It's still the same problem. Until we're all living cooperatively as a community, which is the next step out. When your whole tribe was the reference frame of consequence, you're one extension of your tribe rather than an individual ego. So this is a whole, like, it's a shift in consciousness. It's a shift in how we even conceive of the self, but we've been so extremely individualized that that we're constantly at war because we have to live in competition with all the other individuals around us. And yeah, this has been done by design. It's this whole movement of sectioning us down, and it's a consequence of thought. It's a consequence of self-reflection, but it's had the effect of pitting us against everything. And we should actually be one with everything, because it comes back to how we conceive of our reality. We're fighting over the tidbits because we think we own what's here. We own the land. We own the fruits of the land. Well, no, the land owns us. That's, we belong to the earth. It doesn't belong to us. And when we get back to understanding things that way, when we get back to living from the heart and connecting with our community on that level, then we won't need money and we won't need government. None of this stuff is even real in the first place. It's a mass delusion. We fantasize it into existence. We don't need any of that shit. And it's really been extremely parasitic and malefic in its effects on our society. And it's brought us to this point where we're not only pitted one against each other all the time, they're now, breaking down our ourselves and pitting us against our own selves. It's gotten to a ridiculous level in the mainstream culture.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay, next question. I'm just going to try to keep us on track.
It was a lot of things one could comment on there. It was great to give you space also. It was very, very interesting to have your angle of thought injected there. And there are many things to comment, but what you say, Bridgette, you want to continue anyway?
Well, yeah, because, maybe get to all these different points to just, because because, the thing is, like, you, me, and Ryan,
it takes
we
time.
have similar beliefs and understanding and education and a lot of other things, but we also have different views because of how, like, say, for family values, there's a little bit of different views in there and what it would look like. So just give people kind of an idea that, this is how we communicate. This is how we figure it out. Like, how do we come together to create some of these, ideas? Because that's what we really need to do, because we can't make it happen if we're not communicating. So I thought, we'll just kind of throw out some stuff. So okay, what are the, what would you see, or what are the shoulds of the community values? And so I was thinking about this because I'm kind of coming up with this idea about, the funding, and instead of buying, like a huge acreage, like 500 acres, and rehabilitate it and all the things that I'm going to do that at a smaller acreage, but also buying an older town, that's been abandoned, and fixing the buildings, doing a little co-op, maybe even having a little apothecary medical clinic. Also, other farmers could sell their food. We could also, do lots of different things, have biofuel. We could get people to move in there to grow things and make biofuel. So we could have a biofuel station when people go through. Just a lot of different kinds of things. Not that I want to have a lot of tourism. I don't want to have tourism, but I want it to actually support the area and the area around it, right? Kind of more in an area that's more kind of vast, where there's not a lot of population. So I've been thinking a lot about, what would be like the community, And so these are just kind of my thoughts and things that I'm working on. I was thinking if I went in and did that, you definitely want to bring in other people to buy up other parts of the town, just so that we had the right to fix it up, right? Rebuild the buildings, try to keep as much of it, historically as we could, but also kind of modernize it, make it completely off the grid, all sustainable power. So we also developed this really cute little town that's 100% eco-friendly, right? But not with all the, religion and, a lot of this other stuff that may come with the community. We just come there for the land, to work the land and create products and have, like a really great life. Anyway, I don't want a huge commune, and I'm not really interested in a big community. So how, trying to balance a lot of this stuff out. And then, how do we, build like a few of us in the community that can come together, because I don't want to be a dictator about kind of, what happens, even though I end up in the position of leadership, just because I've been put in the position of leadership so much. But how do we, create a community where we make the decisions if we're going to pay taxes, if we're going to be a part of that state? Do we want to rename, our little town? Do we want to have biofuel? What kind of things would we like to add in? What would make us, more sustainable? And then having people that also sit in the community that know how to do legal stuff, right? So we also have them looking out for the community, and how do we put all these people, how do we get the best people with the best skills and talents and abilities and knowledge, to come there and participate? And then how do we communicate that to the individual families or people that are also participating? Do we have, weekly meetings where everybody comes and meets and have a potluck and talk about things in case we haven't seen each other and what's going on over there and who's doing, what's happening, and fresh ideas, maybe even having people come into our community and give lectures, classes, educate on lots of different stuff. So, it's tough because I've gone from, I'm going to build this land, and I'm still not sure about this little town thing, because I'm not really sure that's kind of the amount of energy that I actually want to put in to building this little town kind of ideal. But thinking about it, what's the responsibility and the structure of what we build and the impact of all the other people that are around us that already live there? How do we benefit that area? How do we benefit the land? And then how do we work together? And do a lot of stuff. It's a lot of work. Community values is a huge amount of effort just to get the systems kind of up and going, so everybody's informed. But anyway, go ahead.
That's a problem of community creation. That's a little bit different than community values. As far as how you attract all the right like-minded people onto a project like that, I have no idea. I mean, if I knew, I'd be running one. But I have given thought to a part of what you were talking about, and in terms of like how you actually run a community, and I'm going to abuse the language a little bit, but in a democratic kind of fashion. And surprisingly, the answer is not democracy. My answer is capitalism. But I'm not talking about, funny money, Rothschild banker capitalism. I'm talking about, well, there are all different forms of capital, right? We always think of, this financial capital, but there's human capital. There's, your resources are capital, whatever. So imagine that you have a community that is a collection of households, right? Typically what a community is. And well, maybe each household has a head so that, you know, the heads of household can gather. If something needs to be done, don't cast some paper ballot, vote with your feet, vote with your resources, your capital. Which means that if a project needs, you know, 3 workers, then you can pledge somebody to the completion of this. Somebody from your household will go and help build this thing or whatever it needs done, right? Because what you would expect in, you know, again, a community-minded sort of scenario like this of people living on the land is that the resources that each household can muster is in proportion with, you know, the number of people in that household and whatever. It becomes about as democratic as you can be, but it's a lot more traditional. It's actually a lot more like the way we lived hundreds of years ago. And this is kind of what Bridgette was talking about in the beginning, when people used to get together and take care of what needed done. Rather than, you know, just everybody is looking out for the community. Hey, there's a fire on its way. We need to create some fire breaks. Okay, well, let's go do that, right? Just having that kind of practicality, but really what you do is you vote with your resources. And to my mind, that's the most actually practical approach. And it was utterly surprising to me that capitalism was the answer. But still, it makes a lot of sense in its way on that kind of community level, not really on the banking system level.
Yes.
Par's turn. Okay, go ahead, Par.
Yeah, I will. I think the balance between private and community, from my part of the world, we are famous for the common man society, and not the rulers the last 1,000 years. But 1,000 years ago, the rulers would be symbolic leaders of ceremonial rituals to strengthen and keep customs, traditions, and of course in that is language and history, which the word in our region long time ago, history, we would say saga. What you say will go on. Sa means say and ga means go. And that's a beautiful way to actually see, like, we have to talk about the memory of our history, the ones before us. And we are famous for being, we even have some unique way of constructing language that will say, our word for community will be sam, helle, and if I could take the first part, sam, that would mean like in unity or in organization, and helle would be means like a place to survive from. You have to produce something from something to get it. I lack the best word. I could maybe try to find it, but I'll leave it. And we are famous for being this. We would have community as something quite natural, and there are negative aspects that would make individuality at times in odds against it. It could be kind of a suffocating situation in some aspects for some private things about you, but there would be something very strong connected to it. And leading this, there's kind of some natural aspects of government. Government means policy or what to decide. And also a quite beautiful word in our region is for decision or council. The Ra, the sun, he rises on one point in east, specific for the day in a specific point of the compass. And he will set on the other side. And that's the sun god Ra. And actually, Ra add to because Ra will be the limit of time. He will come up, he will show himself, he will give the time, he will pass down and go to settle the dark side, the night side. And our word for council would probably also follow the ancient structure of an auction. Is there any bids? First, no, someone comes with us more bids, and until the first and the calling of the second, and then would come the club would smack in the table for the call. That's the third. And it's final decision. No one can change it. In an auction, that's the same function, but likely in community we would have the Ra, the limit of existence, of time, of season, of traditions, of everything. We would have a Ra add. We would add a limit. We would offer it. Do you want to take this decision? That would be a råd. And that would be the time råd slag was the slag, the means actually to hit the club. So in community, we are famous for having, like in our language, we can see it so clearly. If we cherish the oldest part of our language, there will be a lot of gifts from traditions and wisdoms of generations, and all the proverbs and sayings and this and that, as well as traditions, customs, your language, and also unity for us. We will be together. We will decide here. If we decide to stay in our farmer village structure, the council of our place is the actual government. That the word government means to govern, to steer your mental aspects, how you think, the structure. That's actually like natural law. The first leader will be the sun or time and food on the table. And when you are left for a community, most likely we are flock animals, very much suited for maybe 10, 20 families. That will be up to maybe 100, 150 individuals in it. I will agree with the biologists that make this assessment about us as species. We work like we need very few of us will go out in the forest alone for a decade and survive. It's very few of us that can do it. We need to cooperate. So the community level, and as Ryan says, we should actually go from back to nuclear family values to large or the extended family values and into the community. We should aim, and we should make it public, like this is values that will build prosperity and for lack of a better word, happiness or feeling fulfillment in life, and aim for it. And I think the structures at play right now, as Ryan says, is most likely an extremely parasitic structure, and a parasite will never care about anything other than to just get for free. So a community, on the other hand, would be always guarding to have the limited resources to be able to feed us here and survive and build some prosperity and go out in the region to engage in trade exchange and what have you. I like Ryan's idea about the capital, actually a Latin word meaning head. That's we have per capita. They counted the heads of the cows. So capita or capital, that's why they have a capital punishment. You will actually lose your head, right? So they see us as their castle in a way, but to have capital or resources or value something we produce, that's a good way. We should start to see this. In my Swedish native language, we have actually the inherent insight that we understand if you go to praise your God in church, he is actually the only one you should praise. Our language will almost design it so praise and prize is so similar that really they gave us this language message for us to see the really simple, clear truth that abundance and actually, as you said it, Ryan, the surrounding owns us, and actually there is no one can survive for free. It's a struggle, and we have to gain the worth of being able to share from the wealth around here and not see it as I own this and sit on the high pedestal and trying to play the game and construct maybe a theater around you that would provide you food on your little pedestal, and everyone under you are suffering, maybe will generate 90% of all their efforts to pull it up and on this pedestal or pyramid structure for the so-called elites that really don't do anything for us. So community value. I'm almost drifting away here, so you'll stop me, Bridgette, and continue with the next question. I presented a lot of what I tried to aim for.
I did want to make a little comment on that. I mean, yeah, you're right, and you've said this a few times. I mean, we will not have life without struggle. That's, inherent in what it means to be conscious and construct a chronology that we call a lifetime.
Sure.
However, I think when we get back into this kind of, when we get back into living in harmony with nature, basically, I think, well, you see it even still in places where the indigenous culture has survived as such and still has their tribal way of life. They live off abundance in these little natural pockets because they're living in harmony with nature, and nature just provides. It's not that it's, it's such a labor to ensure the survival of your, certainly, a community always has to be aware, has to shield itself from whatever is. But I feel that, there's an exuberance to even existing on this planet, and it's kind of, we're not allowed to experience it properly in the culture that we've constructed. But I do think that there's kind of a Garden of Eden state where living in harmony with nature, not consumed with worry over tomorrow, but living in abundance, we can feel the true exuberance of the beauty and wonder of this world that we have limited ourselves away from. And we've really kind of, every step of progress, so-called progress in civilization, has actually made our lives more confined and worse. So to me, yes, I mean, if the current events are leading us toward having to survive for ourselves, and I mean, that's going to be a very rough transition. But I do think that as people, when we do readjust to living naturally, that life doesn't seem so burdensome. It doesn't seem so much of a struggle that we're actually able to live from the abundance of nature when we live in balance with it.
Right, because we're producing that abundance, right? We're involved in it, right? Yeah, no, I agree on all that stuff. You know, I was thinking about a friend of mine, you know, because I have a lot of Native friends. I've had a lot of Native teachers, but I didn't know up until like 2 or 3 years ago what, you know, they're always saying, you know, our ancestors, you know, 7 generations back, or, you know, we have to make it right on the planet for the next, you know, 7 generations. And I remember one of my Native friends said to me, she said, you know how long a generation is? I said, you know, that's a question I've been like really wanting to ask for 20 years. Like, you know, what's your guys' timeline for like per generation? And so I'm like 500 years, like 100, you know, or 700 years, you know, whatever. And I remember her looking at me and shaking her head. She was like, no, she said, you know, it equals 3,500 years. So seven generations would be the equal of 3,500 physical years. And I remember after this conversation, for like 4 months, it's all I thought about. I thought about, you know, like how differently would we approach our day if we knew that, you know, what we were doing, the decisions that we're making, the choices we're making would naturally for Earth too, right? For the planet, you know, this would be very important for the planet, because we probably wouldn't pull oil out of the ground, right? Because we're thinking 3,500 years in the future, you know, what happens when we end up destroying that environment, you know, because of the things that we're doing, then that could be, you know, a serious problem. But we don't think about that kind of stuff. So, but I still, when I think about 7 generations forward and 3,500 years, sometimes it's so expansive for me, because I'm not really sure that I could be, that I am equipped to know those answers, you know, of what might be needed on the earth for 3,500 years, because I don't have a tradition, you know, I don't have family stories, you know, I don't really have anything that I can actually pull from in my past to be able to help me to manage that kind of idea or situation about the future. And that. But anyway, I just want to, okay, the next sort of question is, what are the family and community values to the planet? And that was going to be the next question. And my answer is just the protection, focus, value, and our effort should be the priority of all the family and the community, is the planet and the life on the planet. And like I said, the effort that we put in and the value for the planet and for ourselves and our community, and the focus, I think it should be the number one priority. And then the protection of it as well for 3,500 years into the future. But okay, but anyway,
yeah,
somebody else take it.
Let me grab that. Like, yeah, we should offer the world something, and from being of community or a structure of a people with its culture, traditions, language, it should not only sustain and survive itself, it should bring something of value for the larger picture. We should give the world something, or well, that should maybe be on the metaphysical, so the meta structure on the like that should be the way to encourage people to come to all from the big, very very big to naturally be in the small units of family. Well, be in yourself, be solid and well composed in yourself and in your family structure from where you came as child, grow up in that family, creating this new family for the future generations, and the next layer of community. I think we should stress pretty much, and the natural, as Ryan says, we should come to the natural senses or feelings about what is natural, what do we really need, and get away from the parasitic, draining lifestyle. Maybe that's why we feel, and maybe I say it because we live in a society that sucks us maybe of 80-90% of our energies, and going back naturally, we would feel like, oh, with so much less work we could actually get so much abundance or sustenance around us from less energy, but we keep more from it what we need. And to offer the world something should probably be in the culture, traditions of customs, traditions, our language, and to cooperate. I think in past times in history way back there was a structure of mostly peace and also connection between people around the world in trade or in culture or in ideas. And we Westerners, so-called Westerners or Europeans, are famous for some characters that's very efficient in the childish, playful way of creation and structuring new things that maybe we didn't know just from a decade ago, but a new situation appear, and our creativity can produce new solutions, and that's something some will say is a benefit from our peoples. I will agree with Ryan that the society we have, maybe it's one part that we believe is us, our people, our European culture, but it's actually like a hidden semi-structure, hidden system in parasite in the core, but in the clothings of something nice, and we should use it. But and us other, we are most likely all our languages and traditions we still can see are firmly connected into the traditional rural societies that has the goal to give itself and the world something more. Ryan,
Okay.
you're next.
So values, I think for the people, I mean, we've been all kind of hitting on it, but harmony, that word again, harmonizing with each other, harmonizing with the world, the natural environment around us, and like Par, you were getting at, having a world. See, well, there's a lot of talk about the globalists, but I guess I'm a globalist in a certain way. I really don't believe in nation states, so in that sense, I'm I'm a globalist, because I think, if we weren't living in such a psychotic way, people from everywhere could encounter one another, be completely peaceful and harmonious, and still collaborate and achieve not only trade, but maybe some really wonderful things could come out of cross-cultural collaboration without homogenizing the entire world. I'm not talking about Walmart globalization. I don't like I don't like that bit. But rather than militarizing against the foreigner, just look at him as a human being and find out that you're more alike than different. And so I think, because cooperation, when we start working together to build a better world for everybody, then we will take care of the planet. We will take care of each other, and we'll be working toward at least that 3,500 year or 35,000 year kind of.
You just increased our timeline.
Yes, not too much.
35 to
Just a factor of 10.
35,000.
A factor of 10 is a magnitude, you know. It's just like, well, okay, a little big, but this is just
Yeah,
one.
well, you know, whatever.
Exactly, 3.5 million years. Ryan, I think we forget. If I would do like a hijacking of history, there's only one common theme over the oral and written tradition, and it's a force most likely dressed as a parasitic culture, always seeping into the new empires or the new growing or producers, and then finally these glorious building magnificent projects creates lots of things, and a couple hundred years later they fall and in utter ruin, and that goes for like 6,000 years back. So normally there will be like the Judaism or the Book of Torah and Talmud will be referenced, that really talks about a axiomatic dominance slave structure. And if we will be wise enough that nature itself is 80% of all organisms on the living side, if we will say the living cell, the bacterium and larger, and viruses is not self-producing, so it's not a living organism. So the viruses actually is, I think, 10 times more than all the other organisms. But we living organisms, 80% of them are parasitic, more or less, and even hyperparasitism. And the only producers on Earth actually are the plants, because they gather sunlight. Some say we can do it as well, but well, I don't know too much about it. I eat food every day instead of going to the sun. But the plants produce, and now we have all the animals living on it. And the limit for parasitism is if you give nothing, only take. Now, actually, grasslands and savannas, I saw an interesting video said that if it's not enormous herds of grass-eating, grazing cattle stamping the land for a very short time, eating the grass and then roaming off for somewhere else, because all these vicious carnivores hunting you will make the flocks safer if they're very large. If this disappears, the animals disappears, these lands will turn into deserts. So actually, in some way, the producers' plants will die. If not, they will give something to the grazing animals, and the grazing animals have to give something to the carnivores, or the grazers will even eat maybe all the plants. So the as you said, balance is an interesting word, and we tend to forget it too much. And Bridgette and I, we practice to say understand instead of understand. And the honor of balance, or actually we should remember, well, the balance and harmony is great words, but we should also remember the parasitic force is nature. And we have to, as a wise animal, know when we are sick, even from parasites. And then we have to find the only cure for parasites is a poison strong enough that will almost kill you, but most certainly will kill the parasite before. That's one of the few only treatments that's actually available for parasites. But in all other ways, I would agree with you fully, Ryan, because you and me and most others are of those productive or creative force. We can hardly understand. There is something traditionally generated for generations, the culture of only taking, only breaking down, but there is such social structure among our species, or something looks similar enough for us to specialize in not giving something, but find the ways to take. And society will not prosper in our ways in our cultures, if we're not aware about this, and the line to draw to learn about this is most certainly not easy. I sometimes take up the question about really a farmer is not a farmer a parasitic structure system, but that's not far away from the elites of us actually look themselves as they oversee the farming of us, we stupid humans, that they can use as farm animals to their wishes and best needs. I'll stop there. I try to make it short remark, but
yeah. So I just want to add something. You know, I had an experience where that I was interning on farms, and I was lucky enough to actually work with this one farmer who was following the parasitic systems or behaviors to keep his herd animals from getting parasites. So we only had 10 acres total to move around we had a little herd of turkeys. We had a little herd of sheep with ram and the mamas and the babies and everything else. So we would have to like move them around. And so the system that was really interesting was that on the third morning when we would take the animals out to pasture, we would take them to another section. Number one, because that was the old section where we were like growing food or whatever else, or that we just grew for them to eat, or there was a lot of stuff that grew out that they needed to eat back. But that was the day that the third morning is when the parasite hatches and moves up to the top of the grass. So you only want to keep your herd in an area for 2 days. Otherwise, they re-ingest that parasite. And so this is how you keep the parasitic, issues of your animals, taken care of. And one of the things that most people do in farms, like horses and stuff, is that they will box them in, to certain areas, or, their turkeys or their chickens only stay in this area. And so they're re-ingesting parasites and all this other stuff. So it's almost like, the things between us and cultures, there's, walls and barricades of information. It applies the same in nature. The more barricades you have, and the more that you're closing off these animals and your farm animals, I'm so glad that I didn't go to other farming schools, because they teach you how to increase the parasiticity in your farm because of the practices. When I went to biodynamics and other things, I learned a whole bunch of, and also studied a lot of that stuff with holistic management, with the grasslands and everything. And you start to realize, like, the more I try to control it, the more that it's controlled, the more that it's fenced, and it applies to everything else, the more parasitic the situation becomes on all levels, including on the earth and the grass and the animals. And that most farming techniques in the United States are all parasitic based.
And sorry, Ryan, many of the stages of a parasite needs different hosts, but in current days, some medical researchers have found that solvents and our so-called hand sanitizers and disinfectants and so on have lots of solvents that actually, if you get too much solvents absorbed into your body, the parasites of inside you actually can manifest all its phases inside the body and doesn't need to migrate from one stage of you to other hosts to come back. So
yeah, so that
Bridgette, this is the same. It's almost a parasite or parasitic intelligence is designing our hyper-technologized society to increase parasitism. Patrick Jordan of Vaccine Fraud, I would like to mention him. He's very radical but intelligent in approaching this question, and that could very well be a thing, because parasitism is almost always linked to viruses in some sort and alteration of behavior. So I'll stop there.
Also, I just want to throw out there just real quick that the reason why these things that were, hand sanitizer, soaps that we use, a lot of different kinds of soaps, a lot of them have been laced with, certain kinds of bad chemicals, but a lot of the hand sanitizers have kind of pharmaceutical grade antibiotics in them that far exceed, other types of antibiotics. And so the more you wash your hands with this stuff, they say that it literally causes antibiotic resistance in you because your body is absorbing all these antibiotics. So that's why the parasite can take over, is because you're antibiotic resistant. But, it would be bacteria, viral agents, fungus, mold, all of these kinds of things could move into your system easily if you were antibiotic resistant. And, the other thing too is that because of the animals we eat in our farming practices in the United States, most people are antibiotic resistant because they feed the animals so many antibiotics. So it's a whole, like I said, it goes back to how we treat the land, the animals, the farming, and if we're doing parasitic activities, parasitic and predatorial, that's what I call a lot of the farming techniques are predatorial. It's a mindset, in the culture and the people. But anyway, Ryan, did you have anything to add? And then I'll ask our last question.
Oh, I was making a comment on something that Parr said a while back, but he was talking about people who specialize in giving back nothing, which I liked. I was reminded. I don't know if you guys have read Douglas Adams but he's got this explanation for mankind where rather than having evolved naturally from the apes and whatever, we were actually colonized by aliens, right? Well, us, but by creatures from a planet called Dolgoff, but they sent off a rocket full of their middlemen. Right? They separated their population into, the creative geniuses, the thinkers, the whatever, minds, and then the producers, the people who did the actual work, and then the middlemen in the middle. And they decided to send the middlemen off to crash land on some foreign planet and get rid of them. And that's how humanity came to this planet. that was his story of the and I think in many ways, like that man was brilliant, and he was right. So yeah, we've got people who have been inculcated into a mindset where they aspire to being middlemen. They aspire to giving back nothing. And that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be prized.
Yeah.
It's called the American dream.
Exactly. Because you have to be asleep to believe in it.
Yeah, or participate in it. Okay, so the last kind of sort of question, and then we'll start tying it up. But what are your personal values that you think you should have, or that are desired towards the planet and community and all of that? And I was sitting here thinking, I probably have to really think on that. But I think for me, like the number one value, it gets me in trouble a lot. But I think the number one value that is needed right now that I could give, or that I could value in myself, towards everything else would be my integrity. I'm going to do something and say something, I'm going to carry it out to the best possible, fullest fulfillment, no matter what. And then the other one is truth. To always tell the truth, at least as I know it at that particular moment. Like, you know, it may change. But in the moment, being able to actually tell the truth, no matter, you know, if it's swallowable or if it's not, if it isolates me more, but to be able to tell the truth about whatever it is that I'm, you know, speaking on, and that I know about the truth. And so I think for me, personally, those are values that I have to work with. My dad that raised me, thank God, I was thinking today, like, thank God, you know, I used to hate him. Like, there were periods of my life that I hated him. And, you know, the older I get, the more I realize, like, somebody was really looking out for me, that, you know, he ended up raising me, taking me in and raising me and teaching me things. But he used to always say that, you know, life isn't fair. It's not going to be fair. Just accept it now and just get out there, you know, and do your best. And that the only thing at the end of the day that matters is your integrity and your integrity to yourself. And because nothing else in the end matters when you leave this world. And he was right. You know, taught me a lot that it's not fair, and to take risks and get out there and learn and do whatever I'm going to need to do. But and for me, the most important values I could have for myself and that I could offer the planet or community or family is the truth. And it has got me into a lot of trouble. A lot. Okay, you guys.
As the deceivers always uses the clever trick, you should always know them by their fruits, because they will use the same words we cultures. I would focus on honor. That's something very specific to not only our culture and Scandinavian Norse cultures, but honor is actually really many people have no idea, but heathen actually means honor. It's an ancient word for honor. So heathendom actually is the similar or the synonym or the variation of Christendom. Christendom means follow law after the traditions of the wisdoms in metaphor portrayed in the Bible. Our region had ancient laws of honor, and your word was the most sacred, and if you dishonored your word, you could practically go dig your own grave. And to be in harmony and live. I want to steal Ryan's nice line of thinking. So for me privately, I should create wealth, and it should be apparent around me from the abundance, not in the hidden way we have now. It should be, prosperity should be from more culture, more people, and more creativity, from wisdom, shared wisdom. In this shared wisdom, I have critically learned to understand there are people so different from me. They really disguise their lies in purported truths, but ye should really know them by their fruits, because nothing but destruction follows them. When they will infest us like parasites, our culture will go down, and we have to be wise, keep wisdom to maintain and strengthen our honor, to give something in the world. And for me to trying to gain wisdom, I will fight with the wise. No, I will fight with the learned, stupid brain, trying to tell everyone, because the wise listen and the learned speak. But you will learn a lot from stomping your head against the wall of life, because the wisdom will come back to you, and finally you will listen. So I try to actually gain this more with inside me, and understand it, not stand under it. I should be the honor, and I actually start to use this word much more. I honor what you say. Yes, because actually in court they will say, well, I can't honor that. Then it's understood really in that context. But we should maybe stop say the word understand, because we have an old English word for stand. That's stand for something, but that's also our word for intelligence or to comprehend things in Swedish or North Scandinavian languages. That's closely tied to forestand. But I keep more and more use the word honor, and that should be my personal guide or inner compass needle, aiding and supporting me in growing ever more wise from being so stupid to try to be learned and speak of truth. But life will come back and teach me.
So I'm going to let Ryan talk, but I have a new word. So we went from understand to honor stand. Now I'm going to be heathen standing.
Let me take heathen. Heathenistic is actually they take something positive and twist it. That's the deceivers. Heathen is ancient or old German is heather. Heather is the similar or the same word for heath and honor. And actually on the heath or the moorland, or that's where we would erect our stone monuments and our earth mounds. And we would have the party lodge or house where we would have the party after the ceremony. So that would be our sacred land, and we would actually be wise. It would many times have a V-shaped stone construction, like a crosshair, exactly nailing east-west, 100% with a maximum fraction of 1 part of 1,000 wrong in points of compass, nailing east-west, because the first full moon after the equal day is a sacred time measure, and they would know that. In our honor monuments, in our honor lands, that would be the heath, the grazing cattle, poor lands. That would be the most suitable to erect lots of structures aligning with the universe around us. The wisdom of our ancestors or forefathers is extraordinary if you peer into it. Sorry,
Okay, well,
it's time for Ryan.
So it's literally Heather. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't have English perfect. So Heather, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like a tall, grassy.
Oh yeah, great,
yeah.
great. Okay, yeah, the heather or he more. That's like more or grassy lands. Poor. Yeah, great. Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, I actually really enjoyed your answer to that. It seemed a bit scriptural at times. I know it wasn't, but I felt like it should be taken down and somehow handed down to the new, whenever
It's
the new.
It's recorded.
Yeah, go
on. Sorry.
Okay, so it was
it can
about
be part of the new Bible. But anyway.
Go ahead. It was about
my value.
Yep, personal value.
Value has to be freedom. And we can't, I mean, we haven't really been talking explicitly about freedom, but well, part of the whole context of the conversation, we're talking about, you know, what's going on in society right now and what's wrong with it. And a lot of what I've been talking about is that we're going in a direction where we're losing the little bit of freedom that we've left ourselves. And that in order to have a better life, we need to go back to having more freedom and getting rid of some of this phantasmagoria that we've, you know, kind of mass projected to hold ourselves, to oppress ourselves, right? But you know, it's been oh, I don't know when I exactly had that revelation, but within the last few years, I've come to recognize that the way to freedom is through community, and that's what we've been talking about the whole time. Is if you're going to exist, we're not going to exist as individual hermits in the wood, like you were saying, Par. We're going to exist in communities, in tribes, and even if we keep our technology, I'm not saying we have to go back to, like, you know, an older type of tribalism. We move forward into whatever it is that we create. But however that looks, we're going to be working together with other humans and actually making that harmonious and making that work for everyone brings us all up, rather than, you know, living in competition with everyone, which just limits us and makes the world so much more oppressive. It literally confines us to try to get one up on each other all the time, because guess what? Everybody else is always trying to hold you down. So when we work together and we kind of embrace one another for who we are, living from the heart, then we can expand, right? We don't have to be so limited. We don't have to be so confined. We don't have to be enslaved. We can be free and be the full expression of the people that we are, within the context of, you know, a loving community. People living from the heart, trying to be creative and not destructive. And so that's where I see freedom coming in, is that we should all, right? I don't want to say we should or anything like that. And I certainly don't want to tell people that they should strive for anything exactly. But the value of freedom is absolute. If we don't have freedom, then again, we might as well not have consciousness. And it's like, I always say, if the good Lord didn't mean for us to think for ourselves, why did he give us a mind each? Right? So we need to, yes, go back and embrace some of these community values, community mindset. And at the same time, we're not abandoning ourselves. We're actually liberating ourselves to be, we still have the personality, we still have individualism, to be the fullest expression of the individuals that we're meant to be, rather than, you know, manifesting this police state to hold you in your, you know, little prison cell. You're free when you have kind of the acceptance, the embrace of a whole community.
Well, it sure would make life just a lot more easier, right? On a day-to-day basis, you know, more people kick in towards, you know, the labor and the things that need to happen, and just what's that? Isn't there like a myth? There's like something like more hands makes the work easier, or something like that, like some kind of old folk thingy. I can't remember. More hands. Anyway.
I'll inject something, because Ryan said together, and it flashed to me like two and gather, and maybe gather, but maybe we should start to honor gather or honor gather, like honor and be together, or gather in honor.
I want a heathen gather.
Well, let's make a Heather party or something, you know. Well, it's well. Just no. One more
I just have to say, I had more of a negative context feeling towards the word heathen, because that's how it's been developed, like heathen. Oh God, you don't want to go. You don't want to go near the heathens. But now I'm like kind of excited because I'm I can be a little heathen now.
Because actually this is the deceiver team. They frame and focus anything positive you have, and then they kind of wall it in and invert it for you, and then displace it to the world like the bad. But actually, heathenistic is used as something very bad. But if you go to the books of the so-called, if you go to the people of the books, so-called, are you really looking at something of the marvel of history, or are you maybe looking at the desertification of our environment? Because maybe this is just the desert gods of the Middle East expanding with a quite devious mental frame, actually like boxing us in to a stupid parasitic system, like you pushed on before. There is the other word, hell. It's actually a Norse word, and you would actually understand it as hail, or similar variations in English or Old English, or like 1,000 years ago English is so astonishingly similar to Norse or Scandinavian. It boggles our mind, because you have lost the trail from the constructed new English. Our constructed languages in the 1500s was framed for a new kind of legal structure going on all over the world. Well, Europe was a separate part, but our modern Swedish was created the same way to match the so-called King James Bible. That's a copyright system framing legal structures in the world owned by the Catholics, or all these structures like feeding off of us and boxing us into idiots and cattle. That's our cattle paper. I'll try to shorten this down because I'll just move out to many places and I cannot come back maybe. But hell, there is actually the word hail and good luck in Norse and Scandinavian, and hell or heal. The hell is from the word heal, that means whole or almost holy, and heathen is probably the base word for holy. It is somewhere in there. If we will follow the wisdom of the language trails back, and we will ignore some parts of the linguists. Many of them are not aware, but probably positioned watchdogs or guarding that some truths will not come out to the masses. They try to keep it like this. So they do this with a lot of words, not only heathen because our sacred monuments around the world are all constructed out in the nature landscape. That's the heather, as you teach me here, Ryan. So and it's creepingly interesting, the exact position alignment of most erected stone and construction sacred ritual structures around the world. It's so creepingly exact. You would have a medicine wheel in Americas, or you will have erected stones in Scandinavia or Russia or Australia, wherever you will find them. They will have knife sharp connections to the local astronomy of the year floating by. They align with the highest leader time, the sun, the moon, the stars, and they decorate the traditions with the ever spinning saga in this night stars going by, and you will fix and call this a constellation, and you will have some traditions and stories tied to this. So, well, they make us forget all these beautiful things. So now we are heathen. I'm the hedonistic monster from Sweden. So which one should we choose? Should we choose to see the words as they give us, or maybe we should alter them a bit or take some of them back? So I'll stop
or make new words.
Yes, like honor gather. Let's honor gather. I want to honor gather.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Well, anyway, any last words, Brian? Do you have anything you'd like to comment on, and then we'll we'll kick out. And, we can always think about this stuff, we've talked about, and then maybe in a month or so when everybody has time, we could come back on and add whatever we've, thought about, because it's a lot of different information. There's just things to think about, how are we going to move forward, right? Okay, Ryan, your turn.
Yeah, I really don't know. I think we've worked our way through at least what we were talking about. I'm good.
I'm good too. I'm gonna think a lot about, some of these ideas and thoughts, and I got elevated today because I went from understanding when I first met Par, and then he taught me about honor standing, and I really got into that, and now I'm going to be heathen standing. So I'm like, I got expansion and elevation today, so I'm good. Any last words there, Mr. Par? Par from Sweden?
As for doing a follow-up, maybe I will stand with Ryan's honor here and say I was lucky you led the discussion, Bridgette, and the interesting input from you, Ryan. We created something. I could not have done this alone, but as a whole, it was quite interesting to partake, but more so to have the interaction with you two. So I'm good here too. I believe it seems we all are good.
All right.
Yeah, thank you both. It was good talking with you.
Hold on 1 second. Let me just stop the recording. Nice. Hold on 1 second. All right, guys. It's Think Collab, and hope you enjoyed it. Bye.